Peace and love, and also light to everybody in the world who receives this. My name is Adriana Tyler. I'm 35 years old. I am an Aries, Libra moon, Taurus rising. I am bipolar 1 to be exact, with manic ideations, is the way it's phrased. I also have ADHD and social anxiety. I'm here today, instead of coming how I come usually with my very poetic way of rocking it out, to just speak to y'all and be honest, truthfully, to share some skin and hopefully make some more people vulnerable enough to share their stories, or at the very least take a look at themselves in the mirror and realize that change needs to happen. We are in a time of major shifts, and if you don't ride the wave, you drown. So, first and foremost, I didn't formally know I was bipolar at all until July 31st of this year. And that was after my manic episode. But believe it or not, because of my amazing brain, which also had a tendency to disassociate, to protect me from a lot of trauma when I was a kid. I actually knew at least 7 years ago, if not longer, that I was bipolar. I wrote it in my work. Very interesting. But I figure everybody likes the juice, right? So I'll just give you that. And, if more details on the story are wanted or needed, even, I'd be happy to share. But on July 30th is when everything began. Things started to go a bit left. If I'm being honest, that entire weekend leading up to that, I was headed down a dark hill. I had been in a very long depressive episode for the majority of the month of July, that I didn't know how to express, because I had all of these new emotions that were coming up in therapy. I've been in therapy for about 3.5 years now, fully committed and open to the truth of it, though, for about a year, to be real. Like, there was just certain things that I didn't want to dig up. And I'm here to tell you, if you do not dig those things up and heal through them, you will forever be crippled by them. One of the biggest was the fact that I was molested at 11 years old, and I had no idea. Multiple times, actually. It was between age 10, age 9, to like 11-ish, close to 12. In addition to that, I also witnessed another family member getting molested around the same time. So it wasn't just me, it was another family member, and my little 11-year-old brain could not take that. So that is when the disassociation started. But over this weekend, that led to what I like to call my awakening, because that's exactly what it was. But also, clinically, a manic episode, it was just a lot of over obsessing, believe it or not. I was late to the, whole hip hop beef situation. Actually, my big bro put me onto it way late. I was only familiar with Euphoria and was like, oh my god. And I didn't know there was a beef track, believe it or not, until around that time. But while I was in my depression and I was super sad, like, a lot of the time I didn't want to get out of bed. There was days even that I wouldn't bathe. I wasn't eating. At the time I was on medication, and I wasn't taking it consistently, and I was overindulging in junk, and I was also overindulging in edibles. It was just a bad scene. Um, but that was my only light at the time. I was literally like over obsessing over reactions to the beef. So shout out to all of the YouTube reactors. Y'all helped save my life, bro. For real. all of y'all. Law Twins, uh, Curtis King, Story Mode Bay, 808 Dad, all of y'all, like, um, Pearl Swirl, like, there's a bunch of them, but y'all were my absolute favorite. I got plenty of laughs and actually gained an understanding uh, on the lyrics to the point where it woke me up. As an artist myself, I never thought that there was anyone like me that wrote like me. Because to be honest, before this, I can honestly say I was more of a fan of Drake's music. Like, I'd stepped away from him uh, over the past 5 or 6 years because I no longer related to his music. But before that, you know what I mean? I could name more songs by Drake than I could by Kendrick. But through that process, over the span of like maybe it was a week and a half for real, but it got deep, you know, Thursday through Sunday before Monday happened. Um, and you know, it was just a lot of fun to re-explore my talents and you know reimagine how I could write and be inspired by that, you know. But so Sunday is when things got real for me. Um, I believe it or not, things were coming out of my TV screen. So this is what's trippy about this whole thing is that a lot of people don't really remember their manic episodes. I remember mine backwards and forwards, and I do mean that literally. I remember the manic side, you know, the buggy stuff, and I also remember the awakening side that I referenced. Because yes, that happens. Believe it or not, I've done a great deal of research, and it's interesting to note that a lot of people like me who have multiple personality disorders, bipolar disorders, schizophrenia, even certain versions of ADHD, synesthesia, these people have a strong connection to the spiritual realm that's wild. Uh, but on Monday, I on the manic side, there was some music that I connected to with Kendrick on Section 80. Now, my favorite album right now, right this second. I love everything he does, but it was Section 80, and I reached out to my big homie because I'd heard something in it, but I was bugging. Um, and I called him over like I was freaking out, like I don't care if you never come to see me again. Literally my exact words, and I love this man, and it would break my heart, truthfully. But I said that like him and his wife came over as fast as they could, truthfully, because he's just that type of human. Um, and I definitely to make sure if anything, if I was okay or whatever. I scared the hell out of them, to be honest. I did not look well. I have pictures to prove it. I was definitely speaking on a lot of stuff that I had no idea about, truthfully, at the time. My I was like jerking, like my head was doing this thing here. Like as I was talking, as you can imagine, I'm sleep deprived as well, and on way too much Adderall, or so I thought. I'll get there, but or so I thought. And way too much edibles, or so I thought. I will get there. Um, but my friends did what they were supposed to do. After I literally jumped in front of their car to try to prevent them to leave. You know what I mean? Which is super uncharacteristic of me. I'm just not that person. I don't make waves and things like that. I prefer a chill vibe, but he did one of the most important pivotal parts of this entire experience, and he called my mother, you know, and I'll forever be indebted to him for that, for real, because he could have just left and I could have been there alone and went through what I'm about to get into, you know what I mean, without help, and probably could have done some really wild stuff without control, because like I said, I'm seeing two things at once, literally zigzag zigging through this world now and the metaphysical world. Um, so he leaves, uh, and I had no idea that he called her. By the way, I just was freaking out that he didn't believe me or what I was telling him at the time. Uh, but I got a call from mom. Uh, she asked me if I needed her, and I just started crying immediately. Yes, I need you. And she got over there in record time. Shout outs to mom. Uh, and when she got there, is when the tide started to shift. Um, we had like a long conversation of her trying to, talk me through dual experiences because I'm literally on one side, talking about nonsensical things, and on the other side I'm like, I love you so much. I just want everything to work. I want to fix everything, and I just want everybody to be safe. You know what I mean? And I also was like wanting my dad, so I called him, and and literally just told him I need you, and hung up the phone. He lives in Richmond, and that man was here in like 30 minutes. So, uh, CPD, don't send him a ticket. But he got here in record time as well. But when he did, is when things got to get a bit darker, or a lot, I should say, to be real. Um, so after he got here and we got to talking, he was trying to wrap his head around what the hell was going on because nobody knew. Really, like I said, nobody was aware that I was bipolar. They were just like, she's manic, is what my mother kept saying. She has experience with this, you know what I mean? She's seen it before. My little brother's schizophrenic. But I got really, I mean, in my world, I'm literally having conversations with them and trying to talk them into believing me about things. And on their end, they are literally experiencing me getting super loud and belligerent. Um, I pushed my mom uh, and knocked her down. At the time, she was recovering from a knee surgery, so that was like, and I would never like I've done my share of shit in my life, but I've never put my hands on any elders ever. I'm not known for fighting either. Like if I can avoid that, I will. But that happened. But in between that, um, we all agreed, and I was, I guess, stable enough, if you want to call it that, to go to the hospital. Um, this is the first time I went to the hospital, mind you. Uh, so we go to the emergency room, and I'm still freaking out. I'm hearing voices. Oh, I forgot to mention, actually, yeah, almost stripped, naked at home, like I was gonna like walk around the yard according to my mom and dad, like I was literally attempting to do that. Um, get to the hospital, and they're checking me in, doing all these things, and I can't keep still. I hear some voices that are literally guiding me to peace in the most euphoric way I've ever felt in my life. And then on the other side, I have these, voices that are compelling me to snap on people and be rude and just be a bitch. Um, so while I'm waiting to be screened, my mom takes me outside. And believe it or not, right in front of UVA emergency room, right in front, I proceed to try to strip again. Like I'm almost out of my shirt. I pull my pants down. Like I don't. Apparently, it's a common thing for people in manic episodes to feel that type of freedom and want to be naked. So I guess that's a part of that. But that is not something Adriana does. Um, uh, and I'm like cursing, and at this point, my speech is starting to get away from me. I'm no longer saying coherent sentences. I'm literally just saying yep, nope, yep, constantly to anything anybody, you know, says to me. So after my mom manages to get me back in my clothes and we're sitting in the waiting room, I mind you at this point I didn't know that this is exactly the way this happened because I'm seeing a completely different world than they are, to put it lightly. Um, I'm going through my own set of changes while they're trying to make sure I'm medically okay. Uh, but believe it or not, after having been abusive, out of character, uh, literally stripping naked inappropriately in front of a bunch of people, all of that. The hospital released me and told my parents the first time that it wasn't necessary to admit me because I hadn't done anything that warranted admission. Obviously I didn't find that out until after what I'm about to get into, but that happened. That happened. So my parents, God bless them, they're still rocking with me. They're with me. We get back to the house. It's dark at this point. It's like, I'm going to guess like 8 or 9 o'clock in July because it was dark, and it gets darker a little later here in Virginia. But when I get home is when my lights completely go out. According to them, this is when I start to get really, really, really left. So I get back in the house and I'm on a rampage. I'm thinking that everything in the house is evil. I broke a TV. I trashed my house. Completely trashed my house. I was throwing everything away. And just yep, nope, yep, yep, nope, nope, yep, 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 nope, through the whole house. My mom tried to subdue me from damaging some of my stuff, and I literally pushed her again. One time I at one point I tried to run out of the front door, and my dad tried to block me from doing that, and he's a big dude, like solid stocky guy. And I overpowered him just to give perspective. Um, but what was magical about that moment, because this is a very complicated situation, right? Like I don't see what happened to me as bad because of how profound it was. I have to be honest. My little brother, who I mentioned previously, who's schizophrenic, uh, came to the house, and I hadn't seen him in a long time. The last time we'd spoken, I was still scared of him, truthfully, because I just didn't understand. In the black community, we have a tendency to shun those who we don't, rightly understand, and automatically think that they're this way without knowing their story. But when he gets there, uh, I don't want to cry. Uh, we have the most coherent conversation I've had with him in at least 10 years. And it wasn't yep, nope, yep. Um, now I have to be honest about this. Um, this is what I remember at this point. My parents told me something completely different. My dad was outside at the time. It was just me, my little brother, and my mom in the room. Now, on my side of things, he and I and my mom were having a conversation on how to properly mend things and to better get along and truthfully, you know, just break some generational curses. Um, and in that particular moment, that was probably one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Like I've never understood anyone so clearly than I did in that moment. And normally, you know, my brother is as stable as he can be, but he is schizophrenic. Um, and my mom, on the opposite side of the spectrum, like outside of what I was seeing, she was just strong and stoic and just like a support and just wouldn't waver in, tolerating whatever she had to tolerate to make sure I wouldn't, go any further left. So what I didn't know is that my pop was outside on the phone with the police because he was tipped off like, hey, if you get her detained by the police, the hospital will admit her. Um, Shout out to Tracy for that one. But that was a real thing. I ended up outside uh, when the cops came. Like my dad was trying to prevent me from leaving the yard and literally holding my clothes up on me because he'd seen me naked at this point. My dad saw way more of me than he probably ever wanted to see of me in that influx of time. But when they showed up, and I'm not this person, mind you, I'm like talking shit to the cops and like, I don't give a fuck, y'all not da 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 da. You know what I mean? Just like all types of ignorant on the outside. Um, on the inside, uh, I'm seeing my own world and how much of it I need to own up to in that moment, believe it or not, that I hadn't yet. And this is after, 3+ years of therapy. But on the outside, I'm, being a gangster, which I am not. I am from the hood, but I've never been that. I'm a straight up nerd. I'm very much a music, poetry nerd, music, arts, everything. Straight up nerd, to be clear. um, but my dad somehow got through to me, and got my attention, uh, hugged me, and said, I need you to go with these people. They're going to get you some help. And for whatever reason, I responded to that. And then the most poignant moment for me was when my little brother walked up to me, and squeezed me like my life depended on it, like he knew I needed it. And said, I love you and I'll never let you go. I'm always right here. And little did he know I had missed him. My little brother was my best friend for a very long time. Like my only one who was like right there. Until he had his breakdown. And it got really different, you know. So that was a special moment. But I remained, I guess you could call it calm, with the cops. They were super nice, to be honest. I was in the back seat of the cop car, handcuffed, and that was a first for me. Believe it or not, I've been in a lot of trouble, but never been arrested. So there's that. Um, but I just remember the car ride, and mind you, I live maybe 10 minutes from UVA. The car ride feeling like it was an hour, because I'm seeing all of these flashbacks of my life in my mind's eye. Like it was the trippiest thing. It's like in my mind's eye, I'm seeing everything that I need to go ahead and let go of, and I'm also looking out the window, um, just quiet, just super subdued, just very demure for real. So I get to the hospital. Of course they admit me because I'm now detained. I have to pause here and say I should not have had to have been detained and embarrassed and ridiculed to have been seen for mental illness when I presented to the hospital after having a bunch of irregular behavior happen. And I actually work for UVA, and this happened. The medical system is very flawed in that way. So I had to pause there to put that out in the open. So yeah, nah, no one should have to go through that. You shouldn't have to, commit crimes while you're under, the veil of a mental illness in order to get care. That is why there's a stigma on people who have them. You know what I mean? But getting back to the story, so I'm admitted. I get admitted to a room immediately, almost it seems. And I'm in your stereotypical uh, psych room. It's super bare. There's nothing on the wall but a TV. It's all white. A little flat bed with the one pillow and the paper thin blanket. The whole thing. Um, and at this point, I'm fully elsewhere. I am gone. Like I'm not present. I'm not the only thing that I know for sure that I can confirm from that moment while I was in that particular room in the hospital was that my parents were in the room with me uh, for about 5 or 6 hours. I believe the doctor suggested they leave at like 2 or 3 in the morning. But what I was experiencing was literally my flashes of all of my repressions came back. I legit relived my abuse. Um, from when I was a kid, I relived all of the times I was bullied. I recalled where it stemmed from initially, and that was at 8. With certain family members questioning my sexuality, when in reality, as you can see, '90s hip hop chick. Missy Elliott to this day is my hero, and back then I idolized her. Like anybody with a baggy shirt on and some baggy jeans in the '90s, I was with them. I rock to their music because I'm like, yes, I don't want to be a cheerleader. That was my vibe. But unfortunately, there's just certain family members that couldn't see that, so my mind started to get warped around that age, around 8. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have a sense of identity, and I wasn't sure what to think or believe because I'm 8, thinking about being gay and things like that I really didn't understand. And I'm getting more and more subdued, and then my abuse starts, and that's when I, to a certain extent, took a back seat. And as a teenager, I had a very, very, very dark period of time. I'm putting this, information in this part of the story because it warrants it. Like, people like me who are bipolar, have schizophrenia, disassociations, ideations, they don't just happen. They start with things that may seem harmless, but they're actually super abusive, and they're pushed into a place where they don't understand themselves. I went from being abused at 11 to being an abuser at 13 years old. I put some toddlers in danger. I was super obsessively stealing. Like I couldn't go a day without shoplifting. It was my fingers were that sticky. It was insane. I was a habitual liar, and that continued for years and years and years. Um, I overate to my detriment. Like I would say about 13 or 14, I was pushing 250, man. And at my biggest weight, I was over 350 pounds. I didn't start losing weight until I was 25. But that's where that starts. So it's important to note that, you know, notice these things with kids early. Shout out to my mom. She tried. She tried to give me therapy when I was a young teenager between 12 and 14. But there was that stigma. A lot of other members of my family just were not into therapy at all back then. Didn't understand it. Didn't see how it could be helpful. Felt like it was an intrusion. If you're black, if you're African American, you know exactly what I mean. That don't ask, don't tell mentality. Just shut up and bear it, basically. So she did actually try. I was just kind of yanked out of it, so I was left to my own devices. So I started hiding behind all of these, different random actions, and I stole a lot. You know what I mean? I didn't just steal things, I stole from myself. I used to cut. I was a hoarder. There was days where I didn't want to bathe, and all of that type of behavior continues to get worse, and it supersedes. Like I graduated from those things to smoking cigarettes at 13. I was smoking weed by 15, drinking, and started not caring about school and everything. Like your stereotypical, kid gone bad that everybody wants to pigeonhole one way. When in reality, I was like super sad, bro. I didn't know how to deal with it. The only place that I felt safe was in my writing, which is why, I guess people would say it's powerful. You know what I mean? They could feel what I was saying on a different level, but for me, it was a safe space for me to get those feelings out. But I'm gonna circle the block back to the hospital. Um, while I'm in this turmoil trying to come to terms with all of my actions, and I'm literally talking to spirits, believe it or not, like, you know, admitting to all of my wrongs is like, I promise I'm going to, let these things go, and I know I need to, and I had no idea, you know what I mean? I didn't want to be that person because I didn't. I've never been a malicious person. I've always been super mild mannered and kind. But I also had this dark side, and I never understood why. My entire life, I never understood why I had such a dark side. But I also have this super kind spirit. It was because of all the hoarded trauma. You know what I mean? All of the shut up and bear it, you know what I'm saying, for decades. That takes a toll on you. And then, of course, I'm doubling down on it by creating more trauma by being reckless as a young adult. But while I'm doing this, my parents have left. And I get to the space where I talk about how I have a fear of dying. Now, not that I wanted to kill myself. I I was suicidal as a teenager, but I had a fear of dying because I had a pulmonary embolism in 2021 and was like always shook about, having another one or having some other adverse thing happen and I die and I do what I want to do. And in this, other realm, I'm like literally thinking that I have to die in order to heal everybody in my world. So I say that because it's important. The blanket that was on the bed, the little paper thin blanket, I wrapped it around my face, and for it had to be at least 2 or 3 hours, man. Like it was dark, and then it ended up being almost sunup before anybody came in to see what was going on with me. Like I tried to kill myself, bro. Like I was suffocating myself in a hospital, mind you, in a hospital. And I have all this blood in the sheets. Like apparently the official count was like 8 ounces of blood came out of my nose and my mouth from trying to suffocate myself. And what makes it worse is um, the doctors that were caring for me at the time when my parents called to check in on me. My dad, yeah, he probably should have just stayed because he didn't sleep at all. He's himself and calls every 2 or 3 hours, and they actually checked in with him on one call and told him that I was fine, that I was, everything was okay, nothing happened, and they told me that, they told my parents because they called my mom and my dad separately, they're not together, and told them that I would need some imaging because I may have had a pulmonary issue since I had a history of pulmonary embolism. Now, y'all heard what I just said. I remember this vividly because I was crying and bawling because I could not successfully kill myself. This happened. Now, around sunrise, I'd say like 7 to 8 o'clock because there were no clocks there, so I have no concept of time. I get moved to general medicine to wait for a room on 5 East. I didn't know any of this at the time. I'm still in the middle of my episode. I'm listening to voices, on one side telling me to run and telling me to save myself. And then I'm also listening to other voices that are guiding me to, continue to heal truthfully. Like, and I'm in this room and I'm listening to literal hallucinations of planes crashing and people dying and people burning. I'm hearing, close people to me. I won't say names because nah, I'm just not. But I'm hearing them screaming at me to fight through it. And I thank God for each and every one of them. If they see this, they know exactly who they are. Because it's only a few. But I heard all of them there. Like they were praying for me and like literally screaming at me, telling me I'm stronger than this and everything. And on the opposite side, I'm literally hearing planes crashing and I'm getting visuals in my mind's eye of seeing like the world on fire, bro. It was the trippiest thing. And while that's happening, you got people coming in and out of the room trying to conversate with me. You know what I mean? And like start casual conversation like nothing had happened. And I'm literally looking at the wall because I don't know who to listen to. And I'm still not even speaking. I'm still doing the yep, nope, yep thing. I hadn't come back to yet. So I'm still speaking whatever that was. Um, and you know, it's interesting. They put in my report that I refuse to speak to anyone. I mean, would you? You know what I'm saying? After you know, y'all just straight up lied to my people and told them that I was, you know. Well, anyway, so I'm going through this process, and there was a moment where um, one of the, I'll call him a sitter. They usually, when you go through psychiatric episodes and they are super heightened, they'll put someone with you to make sure you're safe, and probably to prevent you from having to put on cuffs unless you're abusing yourself. So no, I was not in cuffs, but I was being watched. But the sitter wasn't the sitter. And the sitter literally looked up at me and nodded at me because I was hearing voices saying, "Run, save yourself, run, run for your life." And it got louder and louder, bro. Uh, and then one of the sitters looked at me. I'm not sure if this was just happening in my world or it's happening for real. I'm pretty sure it was just in my world at the time. She was like, "Run." It was like a whisper, like it was super cinematic, like trippy. So less than 5 minutes later, um, I say bathroom, literally, to the nurse that comes and check on me, and her and one other person help guy. They're thinking that they're helping me, you know, to the bathroom. So I get out of bed, and no sooner than I hit the floor, bro, I'm out. Like I take off. Track star. Track star. I literally ran through general medicine outside the doors of the emergency room, and I get, believe it or not, I get all the way to the electronic double doors to the entrance of the emergency room, and they're closed. They didn't open. Um, so I proceeded to bust through them head first. This is why I have this scar right here. And I broke through those doors. I broke through those doors, hit the ground. I ended up almost getting outside. Ironically, there was someone with their back seat open at the time. The back door, I should say, of their car. So I'm like running for the back seat of the car. I'm literally going like to do my Tom Cruise and jump in the back seat. But before I got to the car, because I was on the ground, right, for whatever reason, crawling to the car. Um, And then by that time is when the security guards finally caught up with me and like surrounded me. There was like 4 or 5 of them. They corralled me, uh, and got me up. And that's when I noticed that I was barefoot. Y'all, I didn't even have socks on. And that's when I started to turn a corner because I am like, I'm not gonna say I'm a germaphobe, but I'm a super clean person as a fully, you know, evolved adult. And I walking around barefoot in the hospital is not what I do. Okay, it's just not. And I'm also like, why didn't y'all give me any socks? Um, which is very interesting. You know, this is how you treat people. But I get escorted. It seemed like it was in slow motion. That could have just been me. But I get escorted back to my bed in general medicine, and now I'm a fall risk. I found out that's what that means when you uh run through doors. Apparently, that's considered a fall. But anyway, I get back to my bed, and this is where, ironically, Kendrick comes back in. The whole rap battle thing comes back into effect. I'm in this bed and I'm coming back to, and I'm pissed off in my head. I'm like, I cannot believe these I don't have no socks on and I'm bleeding. It took them, it seemed like forever to patch me up. So my foot's bleeding and both of my feet have scars. My chin had scar. Um, my elbows as well. I was a crash test dummy with that track star move, bro. Um, but I'm back in my bed. Still no socks, by the way. I'm looking at the wall again because I'm still hearing voices, even though I'm coming back to. But this time it's like super peaceful and calm, right? There's nothing dark. And I go through Meet the Grams. And literally, like in my mind's eye, I'm seeing myself taking all of my masks off and admitting to all of the lying, admitting to, not understanding how to communicate, admitting that there's so many things that I would like to be forgiven for, and I want to turn a new leaf. Because before this happened, like I had hit a wall in therapy. Like I didn't know why I was experiencing all of these things, and I'm like progressing, but I'm also regressing, and this was why. There were certain parts of myself that I hadn't freed. You know what I mean? And I hadn't forgiven myself. Because you have to forgive yourself first before, you can even seek forgiveness or even begin to love yourself. Um, but, if you know, you know. Play the song if you don't know the song. But I'm pretty sure America knows that song at this point. So I go like literally in my head. I am going through this song and I'm purging all of my sins. Believe it or not, it's wild. And once I do, uh, Not Like Us comes on next, trippy, and I have to go through Not Like Us and literally say to Spirit, you know, that I correspond to my purpose, which is to share this story, which is to be this vulnerable, which is to be this naked, and, let the people know that, even those that, talk to themselves on the street, deserve an ear. Because most likely they're not talking to themselves. I can tell you that for certain. They're not. They are not. They're not bugging. They're not hallucinating. It's very real. It's very real. And I have a newfound respect for all of those folks. But I get through Not Like Us, and at the very end of the song, I distinctly hear, the spirit of the Most High, truthfully. I put my life on this, man. Like, ask me, am I ready to turn the page? And I'm like, I correspond. I correspond. And it was like a light switch. You know what I mean? All of those same family members that I heard coaching me through my episode were there crying and celebrating me. Even my therapist, shout out to Emily. I will forever love my therapist, man. She's the bomb. She was even with me through my depression episodes. But anyway, they were all there, and like saluting me and telling me to continue the process and trust myself. So, you know, as I'm starting to be more talkative, and apparently I'm getting ready to get a bed in 5 East. Because if you're detained, you have to at least go to the fifth floor for 3 days, for 72 hours. Um, and believe it or not, and this is after I started being responsive to questions. I'm no longer saying yep, nope, yep. Um, the only person who was nice to me was this beautiful older lady. I'll never forget her. She was one of my sitters. Her name is Miss Nancy. And she was super kind and like super spiritual. And she was like, just keep trusting that God's got you, and you're gonna get through this, and you're gonna do great things because of this. Just trust the process. And I'm like listening to her, and like, not necessarily focusing on the negativity of everybody else around me who's literally treating me like less than a human being. It's a bummer, you know what I mean? Same place I work and try to be a good person. These people are doing this, but that was, you know, general medicine at the time. So I get moved. Uh, I go through the process of getting moved to 5 East, like night and day. Night and day. Like everybody at 5 East was phenomenal, super nice, super caring, was really, really, quick about getting me some damn socks because I still didn't have none. Man, and like paid attention to me when I talked and listened, bro. And this was in the first day and a half. This is when I'm still literally super to myself. It's super in my head for real, because I'm trying to wrap my head around the reality of what just happened, because I remembered all of that shit. All of it. And I'm like, was that real? Was I bugging? Like, oh, was that just a part of the situation? Because, I've been conflicted about, religion my entire life. I still say I'm cool with religion, but I'm great with God. I'm great with Christ consciousness. I'm great with spirituality. Religion is a crock. But for me anyway, it's no disrespect to nobody. It's just for me, and in my research and in my reading, I've learned some things. And it's bigger than religion. It's all about God, not lining your pockets. But in 5 East, as I continue to warm up to the idea, and I'm like counting the seconds to my 72 hours or whatever the case may be, like, can't wait to get out of here. So I get to it, and the lawyer comes in and says basically that you are cleared to go, but the doctor suggests you stay, you know, at least a week to make sure you're stable. Because at the time I was on lithium and Seroquel, these like antipsychotics, and they wanted to make sure that I was super stable to go. But at the same time, they were going to let me go after 72 hours. Funny. Uh, but I volunteered to stay. I decided to stay. Like, I remember what was said to me in general medicine: just stay and stick through the process and learn. That was told to me right after I said I correspond. You know what I mean? So I stay. And again, like, the entire time, I can't say enough about how beautiful of a team that I had at 5 East, man. Um, I wrote a whole piece dedicated to them because of that experience. The good, the bad, and the ugly. But what was beautiful about it was to see that juxtaposition. Like, not everybody's terrible. It's not the entirety of the system. It's just certain parts. There are people that care. And that is the point of my video here. There's something special about being on the opposite end of this situation, and to have learned all of the things that I've learned at this point is insane. So for everybody who has to go to sleep at night with some super dark demons on them, I mean super dark, people like me who were abused and turned into abusers, people like me who, suffered from predators and ended up with a bunch of predatory behavior because of it, like super predatory behavior, no sense of self, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, any of those things. To every single one of you people, adults, children, I don't care, peep game, if you do not make that decision to heal from your stuff, man, start the conversation, man. I know not everybody likes therapy. There's different types of therapy you could do, though. If you're an outside person, you know what I mean? Ground yourself outside and start to get quiet and start to really deal with your stuff. You know what I mean? If you're a music person, that's meditation. Get your jig going. But at the same time, release yourself. Mindful breathing is a big help, for real, for real. But I do suggest at some point that you talk to somebody, and usually an objective voice is the best voice. But the biggest message of this whole video, over everything else, is to not judge a person by a label that's put on them, like bipolar 1, like schizophrenic, like, multiple personalities. Please stop seeing these people as demons and devils and all of these things. Yes, they are going through something. They are. But most likely, they went through a whole lot of traumatic stuff to get there. And at this point, either they couldn't get help, or their family abandoned them and let them go because they didn't know what to do with them, or they simply are so far gone that they don't trust anybody. Sound familiar? See, we all have a little bit of crazy in us, but, we still have the audacity to judge. If I've learned anything in this experience, it's not to judge. It's to love on your people, man. Love them back to life. Forgive them. See them as human beings. And don't put anyone on a pedestal. Not even mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever. We are all human. Which means we've all done things, experienced things, lived, loved, and lost. That's hurt. Especially as black people, African Americans, all my brothers and sisters. Stop hiding from your stuff. Stop thinking that you have to hide from the world and play victim for the rest of your life. First of all, it's lame. Second of all, we're not victims anymore. We are victors. We were literally built for this. And if you didn't know, a lot of these, mentalities were literally taught to us in slavery. Were literally ingrained in us. Our humanity was taken away from us. A lot of this predatory behavior stems from that. Coming over here on boats and literally being experimented on and being constantly raped and pillaged and forced to breed like dogs. You know what I mean? Seen as less than human, even after slavery ended with Jim Crow. And with, the drug and crack epidemic. I could go on. But please, respect yourselves. Love one another. And heal, man. If y'all hadn't noticed, this world is getting crazy. You want to be a part of the problem or part of the solution? Make that decision and really sit with that. Again, my name is Adriana Tyler from Charlottesville, Virginia. 35 years old. I'm a poet. I'm a thought leader. I'm a writer. I'm bipolar. I have ADHD. And I'm managing it all. I'm in full remission, drug free. There's plenty more me's out there. You can be one too. Peace, love, and light.